is here with me live or watching this after the broadcast. And this is a Monday, it's the evening, so I don't know if it's still ruled by the moon. I don't know what rulers. And here it shows Mercury hour, which is not surprising as I'm doing a video about Mercury in Aquarius. So Ascendant is ruled by Mercury, which is lovely. Mercury has ingress to Aquarius, and it's already in the third degree, with Lilith opposing Lilith in Leo, separating from the conjunction with Pluto, which the entire astrological community has known as the 7-hour argument conjunction. You can check my Twitter for more jokes, but the moon is in Scorpio. The final phase of Scorpio, the more optimistic one, it does apply to squares Saturn separating from a square with the Sun, and is trining Venus and Neptune, separating from the trine to both, and sextiling Pluto and to a lesser degree Mercury, depending on the orb. So this is the phase from which I'm going to look at. This is the point of reference from which I'm going to look at Mercury's passage through Aquarius. And, well, with my expectation, with the moon here in Scorpio, kind of hard aspect in Saturn, so I'll probably address that. Um, and let's see what happens. Just remember, this is the point of reference. Now we're going to go, well, astrology, to our Astro Tools and monthly astro calendar. This is astrosig.com, which allows me to do all that and more for free. And I'm so grateful. So, Mercury has entered Aquarius on February 11th, and I want to go with the passage of time to see what does Mercury do in Aquarius. Let's see if I can have some asteroids here. Separating from, this is still with Pluto, and we can, because it's already passed, we can go to animate this chart, and we can have the degrees, which is very helpful. Let's go all the way down and animate this chart. Animate. Oh, no, you have animate. I know. Chart. Animate chart. Some people do not understand, and this is like this. Animate chart. Yeah, it is so annoying that I don't have my computer, but that's life. If a person declines your call, they might be in a Zoom or a live. We're in 2023. And let's see. Why don't I have animate chart? Let's try it with this one. Let's try it without the asteroids. Chart here. There it is. And by the way, it's in no way an emergency call for those of you who are wondering what's this thing on the screen. Then that's not an emergency call. Okay, the animate chart apparently works. Animate chart. Thank you. And let's do it in a day's chart. There we go. Here, and we are already in the 13th, so let's begin from today. Mercury is still separating from a conjunction with Pluto. And I want to look at doing. So tomorrow, the 14th in the Middle East, depending on, you can adjust to your location. Mercury will be sextiling the moon in Sagittarius. And that is already a point where you're going to feel Mercury more for the hours where it's happening. The moon in Sagittarius is optimistic moon, expansive moon, depending on where it falls for your. And um, Mercury in Aquarius. This is a good time to just talk about the general term of Mercury in Aquarius. So Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and by Uranus, depending on your tradition. And this is the structure outside the structure. It's also big technology, things to do with the masses. Okay? Think about your versus the podcast that you're listening to from somewhere across the country. Um, Gemini's the masses is more Aquarius. Anything with the word mass around it is Aquarius. Logic, advancement, scientific revolutions. When they are more, when they are accentuated, like Pluto is about to enter Aquarius for 20 years, that could be tremendous scientific revolutions time. Also, social unrest. Okay, both social control and social unrest. The social unrest is a response to revolt, which is one of the significations of Aquarius. To revolt in a structure, you need the incentive, and the incentive is also control. Okay? If in Gemini, these themes happen through social unrest within, in Aquarius, we are revolting the structure. So it's not necessarily people fighting each other, but also people fighting the authorities. It's not civil war, it is outthrowing a regime. Okay, because in Capricorn we've reached the pinnacle, the top of the mountain, and now somebody is losing the mandate of the heaven, okay, to rule. Um, and it happens to lesser degrees in Aquarius with transits like Mercury, Moon. Um, it happens more profoundly. Those are junctured by the bigger planets, the outer planets. Not the bigger, but the outer planets like Pluto. And here Mercury is leaving a conjunction with Pluto in 29th degree, and this mm, separating conjunction is triggered by the moon in Sagittarius. That is something worth noting. The moon is making interesting aspect. It applies to oppose Mars, which is important. Mars here in Gemini, so civil unrest that pertains to message Mercury, message of the regarding the masses, or hidden message Mercury Pluto. Something might not be covered in the news. And there is this mm, separation from a square to Saturn that's still on, depending on the orb you allow. And so Mercury's role in Aquarius. Mercury is small technology like our iPhone, um, our cars, transportation, also agreements, small things, frames and framing, so communication, also children, agreements, and technology. Mercury is also what we do with our hands, so handcraft. Uh, the passage of Mercury in Aquarius can be communication around scientific discoveries, um, around ideologies to do with the masses, okay, around revolutions. Um, because of the separation from the conjunction with Pluto, there can be a hidden message, there can be news that are not covered regarding something that pertains to the masses. Aquarius is also society at large. So, Mercury here, think about the social agreement, the social movement, the social agreement. When you talk about the social agreement thinkers, um, and the concept that society at large has agreed to have a regime, larger or smaller, for the purpose of making their life easier, that in a way can be Mercury Aquarius. Okay, because it's not a social agreement between people, internal affairs. It's internal in the sense of between people and the regime. Perhaps in Mercury Capricorn, society decided to give an authority power to regulate everyday life. In Mercury in Aquarius, there is perhaps a revoking of these agreements. Uranus also rules divorce. And here it's not a divorce unless it's your seventh house. It can also be a divorce from certain agreements that we agreed upon during the Mercury in Capricorn. We're divorcing, we're separating. So Mercury here can also be untying the knots. We revoke in certain authorities that we've given our regime. We've taken our power back. Taking our power back is more Pluto, but here is more um, rebelling, the theme of rebellion and the theme of agreements. So it can be the contracts that we make as rebels, the social contracts that we make as rebels, or rebelling the basically the regime. So we can expect a lot of demonstrations, but also demonstrations that begin to be unusual. This is where strikes happen, mass strikes. Okay, just as Mercury ingressed into Aquarius, for example, in Israel, we were announced that there is a mass strike um, on Sunday, which was today. No, already Monday. Oh, on Monday. So we were announced that there will be a mass strike on Monday for an issue that began when Mercury was still in Capricorn. Something to do with the juristic system, the Supreme Court, and the correlations with the government and the juristic system, the internal corruptions and the corruptions of trying to have power play with each other. And so only when we have Mercury ingressing to Aquarius, there's a mass strike. There were demonstrations, plenty of demonstrations, but now it is a mass strike. Mercury in Aquarius can signify both Saturn, both the Sun, yes, but on a more local, what will trigger an event? So when the Moon hits this Mercury, there can be a mass strike about something. Because Mercury's agreement and the theme of Aquarius is rebellion or excessive control, which in turn triggers mass strikes, mass rebellions um, against any regulatory um, tradition. Now, because Mercury is still separating from Pluto, we can expect with this one um, a lot of things that we don't see on the news. Mercury also rules children. So it can either be that we strike for things to do with children, or the children are becoming rebellious. So at this time, children in general can become rebellious, um, wanting to be in the open space. Also, the Mercury's trade markets, so open markets, and of course, we need to beware of trading to do with children, which is Mercury inherent everywhere Mercury is. Okay, um, Aquarius is the open space, so if it is a market, it's an open market. Um, and then depends on where it falls for you. Okay. Purchases. Mercury is also trading and business, so purchases. We might tempt towards purchases that are unusual in nature. We might want to spend our money in a way that is unusual, or make money, or make business, make deals that are unusual. There can be eccentricity to it. We might want to, fund, maybe fund people who strike, stuff like that. Um, Purchases to do with Aquarius. Well, there can be technological purchases that you might want to do during this time, or you might feel like you need. Um, yeah, let's continue on to see what Mercury does. So Mercury here begins to apply on the 15th, to apply to sextile with Jupiter, and later, of course, Chiron. Mercury, Jupiter. So Jupiter is ruling Sagittarius, Mercury is ruling Gemini and Virgo. Um, Jupiter in Aries. Aries, we said, is the sense of self. It is also ruled by Mars, the ability to defend yourself physically and mentally. Okay, to defend your sense of self in spirit and in matter, okay, in your mind and in your body. And Jupiter is a religion, a philosophy. Okay, it's a religion of radical self-acceptance, um, and also assertiveness. Mercury is detail, and Mercury here is in the sign of big communities, the masses. So there is an understanding of how certain certain communities serve the sense of individuality, the sense of self of the members in the community. And it's a very good aspect. Okay, it's triggered by the moon, which means we're gonna have to make an effort to tap into it. Okay? It might be triggered by the moon in earlier hours in this day, but this is a good time to conceptualize where your boundaries stand when you come. What type of community do you want in your life that can allow you to maintain your sense of self? That can allow you to defend yourself. This is the aspect where you would think about um, small government or rebelling government, Mercury small, that people are armed. It's a philosophy that people are armed to protect themselves from the regime, so they can have a bit of anarchic. This is a bit of anarchic point of view, um, and be successful. Understanding, oh, if, for example, if everybody has means to protect themselves, or a gun, okay, Mercury is also technology. It's a technology of self-protection. Everybody has a gun. Or if everybody, yeah, it's more like that. It's technology of self-protection, sustaining yourself, security. If everybody has a gun, then everybody can be safe. Okay, so this is the type of ideology and philosophy of life. Aries wants to protect themselves, and we want a community where each individual can protect themselves. And technology here, so guns is a good example. Or pepper spray. Okay, pepper spray. Pepper is also quite Martian. So even pepper spray. Everybody has pepper spray in this community. And so everybody is allowed to carry pepper spray. And they can protect themselves from the government, from the police officer, from the plutocracy. Okay? And this is established in a social agreement. That's the kind of aspect where we would sign or think or conceive or agree on such a social agreement. Um, this is also where you might want to buy pepper spray. Buy something where you can protect yourself with a sense of optimism. Hey, it's not Jupiter, it's not fearful, but it's understand that I feel safer when I can defend myself, where I can individuate. And Mercury is technology. So this is a good time to make such a purchase for yourself, but it's also related to community. It's also related. It's not, you're not buying this because you're living in a bad neighborhood. You're moving to a good neighborhood and you're using a lock on your door. Okay, a lock on your door is a great idea. Okay, or you're using cameras. Unfortunately, there is the concept of mass surveillance in Aquarius. And so this can also be a discussion. Or maybe people can be feeling in the philosophy that they are more protected if there is mass surveillance that everybody can tap into. On the other hand, this is also open source. Okay, if Aquarius programming is open source. In Capricorn programming is, Microsoft, Google, Apple, but in Aquarius it's more open source. Also the type of information, okay, it's more Wikipedia. Um, and so sharing information, community based on open source coding, security system based on open source coding. Okay, that's more the approach. Understanding that our individual rights, perhaps in here, are believed to be best kept in an open source technology. We want transparency in communication in Aquarius. It's the most open. Okay, it's not in the air. You cannot hide too many things in the air. With Pluto, there can be, air pollution, and so even with Saturn, discussing the quality of the air. Um, but the air's quality is that you cannot hide, just like the water, the Pisces or the Neptune quality is that you cannot, things tend to leak, right? The air quality is you cannot hide anything, not for long. Even the governments that relied on control, they relied on people um, speaking about each other to the government. Okay, they relied on such a system where people would speak. So it's not that they relied on keeping things secret, it's that they relied on people to speak to the government and to use it as the people would feel they have the power to sneak to the government and then would sneak upon each other. Um, but that is spying on each other and so on. Or, saying somebody's a spy is more like Neptune, the Neptune Saturn stuff. Let's go on. So we continue. Mercury tightly applies to sextile Jupiter. Mercury, yeah, that's pretty much what we have here with the moon in Capricorn. And then the moon will conjunct Pluto in Capricorn for what seems to be the last time It's doing so before Pluto ingresses into Aquarius. So this happens between February 17, February 18, depending on where you live. And now the moon is applying to conjunct this Mercury, and this is the second triggering of Mercury in a more profound way. Okay, when the moon crosses over something, the moon being the closest to Earth, it attracts the energy of the planets, and so an event is more likely to happen. And here the moon already begins to apply to Mercury, while we have a separation from the sextile to Jupiter, which is still in very tight orb, and Mercury begins to apply, um, already applies to sextile Chiron. Is to do about wounds around the sense of self, protecting your identity. Okay, protecting your identity, because Aries is the eye, and it's also ruled by Mars. So within the eye, there is the notion of individuation, of the notion that you can protect yourself, and Chiron signifies a wound in the ability of every person to protect who they are, their identity. Mercury is technology. Um, the moon applying to this sextile signifies a point of optimism in the ability to protect your sense of self using technology. It can be a new technology. You learn more about technology. You learn more about your power is a big word. Here, the moon is still separating from Pluto, um, bringing in power, but as it is going to apply to conjunct Mercury, um, let's see if we have, yeah, this one. No, this is still separating. Um, as the moon applies to Mercury, what we're getting is there's a message that's optimistic about maintaining your sense of self in the community. Um, Perhaps there is a new agreement, perhaps there is a successful strike or rebellion, and something has been corrected. But what has been corrected or is beginning to be corrected is, and again, this is an opportunity. It's not the hard aspect, it's a soft one. You need to tap into it. There's a possibility, there's an opportunity to manifest here a successful protection of your sense of self using technology. For example, I just saw a short on YouTube. If you are citizens of the United States, um, a, a lawyer who protects civil rights, she said, do not use the fingerprint on your phone, because if a policeman stops you, they can use your fingerprint to unlock your phone, but they cannot ask you for your passport, because that would mean that you testify against yourself, and you're not obliged to give them your passport. Okay, and then what you should be, you need to ask if you are detained. If not, you should leave. If you are arrested, if not, you should leave. And if you are arrested, you need to say, I want to speak to your lawyer, and blah, 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 invoke the fifth or whatever. But this is just think about the information, okay? Just knowing this, that not to use your fingerprint, because sometimes police can be very helpful, but people are people, and in any authority there are crooked people, and they can, even if you're not doing anything harmful, they might want to solve the case, and they're looking for someone to drop to drop it on so they can show they solved the case, and you don't want to fall prey into that, right? It only takes one corrupt police team in 100 to do a lot of harm. Um, and so here you may find a way to heal, to correct yourself, some information, some message, to protect your sense of self. Um, and this is in front of authorities for being more anarchical. It's the rights of anarchism. Even though, okay, this always the point to remember that the desire for anarchism is only steered by the counter um, policy of over governing. Okay, so Aquarius can be about over governing just as much as it can be about the desire to have anarchy or some sort of anarchy. Okay, the anarchy lack of overall regime. Okay, it's not randomness. It's just a lack of. It's not a lack of patterns, but within society, but rather the lack of a government upon society, which Aquarius calls for decentralization. Mars here is, this is the 20th of February, Mars. Mercury is applying to trine Mars and square Uranus. So this is where Mercury is triggering, just like the Sun, Mercury now is triggering the pivotal point where Saturn used to square Uranus for 2 years. Okay, the square by Sun is not ended yet. And there is a trine to Mars, which is in Mercury sign. Um, well, and Venus ingresses into Aries. Well, action here, while action can be promoted, Mars action could also be an act of speech. Mars is already square by sign to Neptune. So what Mars is trying to do, and I've talked about it when I talked about my February um, astrological forecast. So look into March, sorry, from March astrological forecast. When I talked about this, what Mars is trying to do in Gemini when going direct, it can feel, and you know what, this deserves a video of its own. It does deserve a video of its own because when Mars is going direct, yet things are going more smoothly, but it is square by sign to an outer planet, to Neptune. And that's the closest to having Uranus in Gemini, uh, other than having Uranus in Gemini. Because what Mars is trying to do here in Gemini, it's the best thing you could do is to let go and surrender into understanding that Uranus is going to come in 2025 and begin to do the job. Mars is a personal planet. It does not, how do you say, pack the punch I, of, I might have gotten this thing wrong, but um, it does not have that imprint that an outer planet has in Gemini. And so it cannot fully do its job. It's trying to do, and you may have been feeling this in your Gemini house. Okay, you might have been feeling this. You can do things, but you do a lot of things, and it still feels like you try to move a mountain in the house of Gemini. And while you're successful, it's not you're not successful, you're active, you're doing things. It's like trying to move a mountain. You know, I even think about Elon Musk, that I don't support a lot of his actions. But you think from a bird eye view, he bought Twitter during the Mars retrograde in Gemini, or the Mars, I don't remember. And whatever it is that he's trying to do there, it feels like he's trying to move mountains. Even when Mars is direct, things are not going smoothly. And that is, you know, so we might not like Elon Musk too much as an example, but even if you look to your Gemini house, you can understand it's like trying to move a mountain. What you need to do there is there is a lot more surrender than action, even when Mars is going direct. And Mars is only going to leave its shade period mid-March. Okay? So Mercury trine in Mars here is a deceiving. If you don't look at the context, you can get the deception that things are going to go smoothly with this aspect. And there is still the beautiful sextile to Chiron. This is an exact sextile to Chiron. In a more optimistic way, um, it is in surrender and letting go that you may find that you can radically accept the places you were wounded. You can radically accept why. Um, I have it in the fourth house, and it feels like cleaning the house is like moving a mountain. I'm like, I understand. I'm not only cleaning my house, I'm doing rituals, and of course, it takes like to move a mountain because there are things that cannot be done right now. There are things that Uranus is supposed to do. Okay, and so this tending to the Chiron wound is radical acceptance that is asked from you to surrender, to understand that not everything is in your hands here, and still there is a lot done. It's just that there's so much to do, and nothing everything is in your hands. So this mercurial aspect here, on a more mass level, people may begin to understand that their strikes, their demonstrations, okay, in Aquarius, um, their masses tending to something is still not getting at the core level. And they have to radically accept that at this point, this is all they can do. So they're, you know, in a very paradoxical way, there is masses of individuals, each feeling like there should be done so much more already. And why aren't everybody doing that? But still, the time has not come. Pluto is the 29th degree, has not yet fully ingressed into Aquarius. Neptune and Mars are square by sign. Mars is applying to square Neptune again in Gemini, so the civil unrest is not yet taking place. It will happen with Uranus. Um, there is also assessing, you still have knowledge that you need to get to the deep of the depths of the Capricorn, the structures, the regimes, the government, okay? Like, and here, Israel is the closest example that I have, but it's so clear. There is corruption within the juristic system, there is corruption within the government, and then there is corruption within the government trying to overtake the juristic system, but there is also square and honest corruption within the juristic system, kind of trying to police the government in a way that is castrating the government. And one of the root causes is actually civil unrest within segments of society that don't agree with each other and they try to check the other person, like the other segment of society, and that is displayed in the structural regime and bodies and government bodies. And so everybody understands that something needs to be done yesterday, but there's not a lot that can be done at this point. There are certain deeper understandings, deeper things. So Mars has been gathering up agenda or gathering up a policy or strategy But Pluto is still informing us. Pluto is asking, think 300 years from now. Think 300 years. Don't think you are in the left wing, so you're afraid of the right wing. You're in the right wing, you're afraid of the left wing. Think 300 years from now. How would we live? How would we structure ourselves? What would, you could have a robot as the prime minister if we try to look at the technological developments versus what's happening today. You have AI everything. Your car drives itself. Your government might drive itself. What do you desire as a human being living in the 22nd century? What do you desire 300 years from now? 24th, 25th century. What do you desire now? What seeds are you planting now? It's more than just strategizing this argument. We are all asked to think big and also on an individual level. We will probably not get to the 300. Maybe some of us will, who knows, with the technology. But we are asked to think way beyond the scope that we're used to think with personal planets. Um, and Mercury here is also applying to square Uranus in Taurus. So, talking about a revolution, this is where Mercury has a message. Mercury wants to communicate something. Mercury maybe wants to be the voice of reason, or Mercury wants to rebel, but there's somebody already rebelling on land. Mercury wants to rebel on air, and Uranus is rebelling on land. Um, or you think about it if you think about an army, why am I getting this analogy? Perhaps because of the sextile to Jupiter still. So you have air force and you have land forces. And you have to command the air force and the land force. You have to make sure that your planes do not bomb your soldiers. With this aspect, they could bomb your soldiers. Or your soldiers, if you have land, you have technology also on the land. Um, this can be very much like a plane being intercepted from the land. Think about the Iron Dome technology, okay? A missile is being shot and then it explodes in the air, but so there is a conflict here between the forces on land, the technology on land. But why do I get war analogy necessarily? Why war analogy? I mean, yes, there is war in the world, but Uranus is rebellion. Maybe it's guerrilla war, like terror. Okay, like terror attack. I'm not saying like 9/11 or anything like that, not at all. Um, just the notion that Mercury is in an air sign and it's technology. Uranus is in an earth sign. Okay, it's also technology. It's a big technology. So there's a big technology on land that is having a battle with the big technology. Okay, and therefore you can think about Air Force versus being intercepting an airplane, something of a conflict. Okay, there's this conflict. Um, and yeah, there's also, Taurus is also banking system. Aries is Aquarius is science. So the funding, who funds scientific research? Okay, they can be rebellious about that. Maybe the banks will not fund certain research. This is also the case. Or people want to be the bank with Uranus and Taurus. The person wants to be the bank. and there is still conflict here. But what the bank is supposed to do for the people, and what is actually happening, what the agreements are, maybe revoking certain agreements with banks and so on and so forth. As we continue, yeah, this is the hard aspects. Trine. Saturn is, I believe, invisible depending on what method you're working, which also is important. The ruler of Mercury is now invisible. So Saturn is getting an update from the Sun, and the Sun is getting an update from Saturn. Um, yeah, we have this ongoing trine with Mars that is supposed to make things easy, but look at Uranus here. Okay, Mars is helpful, but Mars doesn't. It only begins to do. It does what it can, but there is a lot of surrender to it, because Uranus is going to work its way through Gemini. But even the little that matters in your Gemini house, or the surrender that you do with Mars in your Gemini house, um, note that it is preparing the way. You're getting ready for a Uranus experience in your Gemini house. Here we have this beautiful um, sextile, the Chiron and the Moon, and here we have the squaring of Mercury by the Moon from Aries. The Moon in 17 degrees Aries sextiles Mercury, which trines Mars, so the Moon sextiles Mars as well. This happens on the 23rd of February, and what I like about this is how harmonic it is. Still, there is this ongoing Uranus thingy. When the Moon is sextiling Mercury, it's not only activating Mercury, square between Mercury and Uranus. So there is discord in the sky. It's very potent. Mercury is separating from that discord with Uranus, but it's still in orb, and this is what we're going to feel. So whatever happened in previous days, we're not going to feel as much as we're going to feel when the Moon is triggering that. So expect a strike of disruption to your actions. Your actions, they may feel like a bit, something is going smoothly, but not. Okay? Not. You have to give up. You have to let go. You have to surrender. That sometimes you're going to be able to act, and sometimes Neptune does something there. And then there is this disruption with Uranus. And Uranus is about, will be going here. So whatever you feel in your Gemini house, think about it. Concentrate on that. You're heading for 70 years of Uranus there. This back and forth with Mars and Neptune, adopt the bird's eye view. Adopt the bird's eye view. Because this is just the beginning. Okay? There is something beyond you that you might not be able to navigate, and Neptune and Mars, the juxtaposition of their natures, in a way, is Uranus. Let's continue on. Um, yeah, still. Now Mercury is already beginning to apply to conjunct Saturn. And here we have the moon. This is going to be a bit of a one of the most disruptive days of Mercury in Aquarius. It's the 25th of February. The moon is growing, so it's not decreasing in its effect, it's growing in its effect. It's applying to the monthly conjunction with Uranus, and it's still in orb to square Mercury. So this time the moon is harsh aspecting Mercury. This moon is favoring Uranus. Communication here can be disrupted. Electricity can go rugged. You can lose some electricity devices, okay, or not lose. Well, you can lose because Mars and Neptune's like the square by sign. So still you can lose a electric device. It can be even that you have an electric device that is serving you good but not the best. You might lose it, or you might not be able to use it. There can be a power cut. Okay, power cut. The electricity. The electricity in relation to banking. Okay, the application you use to transfer money, they may not work correctly now, or they can be hacking. Mars is also rebellious in that way. Okay, Mars is penetrating somewhere, so they can be hacking, and you know it can even be as um, maybe you had to renew your credit card and you didn't renew it yet, and then there is mass hacking to the clientele of this credit card company. And like, oh wow, I was thinking to myself, I am so lazy that I didn't do it until today. And then there is mass hacking, and you didn't get hacked because you didn't renew your credit card. It can be something like that. Okay, so start to see the bird's eye view with Uranus. It supports what is happening in your Taurus house. It's ruled by Venus, which is now fallen in Aries. Um, but she's not like she's fallen because she's a Martian. Okay, it's not a good time for the type of romance where Venus attracts something. But she is very much good in developing the physicality, the sportive. Um, with Mercury is, you know, if in a square of Mercury, Uranus takes the square. Uranus takes this battle, and understand that it is a good thing. It's going to be emotionally disruptive with the moon there. Um, on every level, like I said, we can see hacking, disruption to bank companies, rebellious, but we're probably going to side with the hackers. It can be like an anonymous thing, that we're probably going to side with the hackers, or side with the people who rebel, side with the people who hate because of the moon. Okay, depends on your natal chart. Where does it meet your natal chart? Um, but that is something that can happen. A couple of hours of disruption. Here the moon, okay, this one is interesting. The moon is going to go through Algol and square Mercury. This is a tighter square than Uranus. Um, and there is a trine to Pluto, a planet trine to Pluto. This is where Mercury is going to square Algol. Here is Algol in the 25th degree Taurus. I believe it's 25th now. And the moon is conjuncting it and separating from a square to Mercury. And so Mercury square in Algol happens every once in a while. The moon on Algol, when it happens, means that we're going to feel that. On a mundane level, um, Algol is, you think about the rage of the gods of the land that are angry. Things that are violent can happen on a mass scale. Um, so here, even if there is just, hacking or um, media or agreements, revoking of agreements, it it entails violence. Now, this is for those of you who work with Algol or who have talismans with Algol, have a portal to Algol. If you make offering or if you ask Algol to protect from those dark energies, those boundary violations in spirit and in matter, that perhaps can be a time to do that. Don't know how to elect a particular time because the goal is a bit complicated. You need to, there are a couple of phases and you need to get the right phase for what you're trying to achieve. But note also that there is a point where the ascendant is right on it. Okay. Again, it's not a good time to make talismanic work because Saturn here is squaring to. So unless you really know how to work with Saturn, or there's something in the Saturn Aquarius here that you would like, um, the midheaven is on the Nebalgadi. It's a very interesting time. I wouldn't say it's an election, but it's a very interesting time. It's a very disruptive time as well. The moon is crossing over Algol, is between squaring Mercury to squaring Saturn. The ascendant is going to be on this degree in the Middle East, and the midheaven is going to be on the Nabalgadi. February 6th is actually a day that we might hear about in the news. Um, Not favorably, unfortunately, okay? There is also the trine to Pluto. Whatever is happening here is a catalyzer for the change in the context of Pluto in the 29th degree. It's the context of 300 years at least. Here. On a more personal level, these couple of hours are you know, the duck under the bed, sozusagen, and prepare yourself your favorite cup of hot chocolate and just try not to do much at this time. It's a couple of hours. It's not a lot, okay? Not to do too much at this time. Try to be easy on yourself. Mercury is applying to Danabalgadi. Um, there is a things are as they should be, but things are as they should be from the vantage point of Saturn, from the vantage point of Algol, from the vantage point of the outer planets, and the moon is also applying to conjunct Sedna. Okay, it's a day we might hear about in the news. Not necessarily a particular day, but something in there. Be cautious. If you have Algol talismans, work with them. If you're working with Sedna, work with them. But again, work with them. Not, do not consecrate anything. And just please call on these portals to help you through that, and to protect you and to protect the world if possible. So yeah. Again, when we see the juncture of the personal planets and the moon and the outer planets, including Saturn, this is when we know that whatever is happening in the outer planet sphere or the fixed star sphere is also being drawn to Earth. And these are big events. So, 7th February. Mercury is right on Denebalgadi in his conjuncting Saturn in the 29th degree. The moon is not aspecting Mars yet. Um, so there is the trine to Mars, which, like I said, because of the square, do allow surrender to be. Then a Balgadi is just going to do what it has to do. It's going to police agreements, purchases, technology, whatever has not been going correctly. That is the point where you can actually ask for Dan Balgadi to do what is right and to put order in things. Um, and we can get the message. We may get the message of the day before, but we can also get the message that on this day we can get communication that is clearer. um, Perhaps we can, Mercury also rules thieves and trickery. It also rules being trustworthy. If you look at the petition to Mercury by um, in the site of Christopher Warnock, you call Mercury by many names. One of the things is trustworthy. So Mercury can be trustworthy, especially on the Balgadi. So I don't know how it will play out here, but this is where you want to call Mercury the trustworthy and then Balgadi and see. And the moon is in Mercury's sign, so it's not aspecting Mercury; it's in Mercury's sign. Um, it's not an election for something, but it is a very interesting time. Here, the ascendant is a 29th degree Taurus, which is ruled by Venus here, that applies to conjunct Jupiter. You can have good, clear communication on issues that pertain to the role of science in society, activism, things to do on a large scale, technology on a large scale, budgeting that technology, and so on and so forth. And Saturn is already in the 29th degree again. The pivotal times. Not the days pivotal, but pivotal times. And the moon is trining Mercury the next day. So this is very triggered. When the moon is in Gemini, Mercury is triggered, and now the moon is trining it. There's a lot of letting go. Again, the moon applies to square Neptune. So the context of the outer planet, that is Neptune in this case, more so than Saturn, is to surrender. What you're called to do, do it. But other than that, it's time to surrender, to let go. You might also feel lethargic or tired. um, Moon continues to trine this Mercury, but from Cancer. So Mercury is again triggered, but this time not Mars so much, and it also does not aspect Mars. There is an application to conjunct Saturn. Messages around the themes of Aquarius, from authority figures, regulations, new regulations, messages about regulations or striking against the regulations can happen. But here I think it's new regulations, that are around. And here, this is an important day, although it's not moon. It's good to pay attention when Mercury is in the degree and about to ingress into Pisces, conjuncting Saturn. This is another day. Um, we might not. Mercury is not making any aspect to any other planet other than Saturn. There are new regulations that are going to affect us for the 28 years to come. And they're not necessarily communicated, they're not necessarily on the news. Um, the moon is not aspecting this. We don't hear of it. Okay, so there's agreement in the sky between Saturn and Mercury, a contract that is not communicated to the Earth. And this is already the ingress on a Friday. Mercury ingresses into Pisces, not making any aspect. Um, Very interesting ingress, and which will probably deserve an episode of its own. This whole concept of Mercury in the 29th degree, not making any aspects, conjuncting Saturn, Mercury in isolation here. Children can especially feel um, unease. They can be on the one hand protected, because Saturn can also protect with its delays. Um, on the other hand, they can be feeling very restrained. So mercurial figures feeling restrained. Judges, tricksters, thieves, but also people trustworthy, children, traders. There are new regulations that are very restraining, and they're gonna affect us on the long run, unfortunately. Some technology restraining regulations around technology. Some of them are not necessarily bad. Maybe certain facets of AI are until 28 years from now as well, or installed. So, depending on where it might be for you on the houses, you may experience it differently. Um, Thank you for being with me. I'm very, very, very tired, so I will end this video, but it is in my 12th house, so of course it's difficult to talk when you are having, stellium in your 12th house by transit, preparing me for Pluto. So, um, yeah, and I'll just see you in next video. I just wanted to make sure I do a video for Mercury in Aquarius. So yeah, bye.